Hi everyone, this is video 2 in the Babylon Falling, Grace Rising series, and this one is called Daniel and Our Lion's Dens. Those of you in the south, you can enjoy my beautiful view here. This is my yard behind me, all filled with snow. So I know a lot of southerners don't like snow, so you can enjoy it from a distance. How about that? All right, so if you're new, this is your first time, what I am doing is I am reading to you my blog post so that you can have it in video form and listen to it at your convenience, as a lot of people do seem to like to do that. But you can also just read it if you'd rather. And you can find it right there on my website at pastorsfeistywife.com or SharonStults.com, SharonStults.com. Either way, if you want to read it, it's under the Pastor's Feisty Wife blog. All right, here we go. Let's talk about lion's dens. Many of us go in and out of lion's dens every day. Some of us work in them and maybe even live in them too. These are environments that are not favorable at best and openly hostile at worst to godly values. If we are not remaining intimate with our Father, the lions can tear us to shreds. Those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High, like the prophet Daniel did in the Old Testament, can survive carnivorous environments without even getting any slobber on us. Consider these various dens of lions and their impact on a believer. We must recognize when we are on Satan's turf and that we are his prey. So if you're in an intimate relationship with an unbeliever, I'm sorry, sweet one, but that's a lion's den. Maybe you're in a work environment filled with godless behaviors like gossip, treachery, adultery, stuff like that. Even just crude, rude conversations. What about, are you going in and out, or are you a student in a school system or college or university that exalts humanistic philosophies and ignores or is hostile to Judeo-Christian belief? What about even just a thing like a shopping mall? And I'm thinking of my shopping mall that has storefronts displaying nearly nude mannequins in very suggestive clothing, or CDs loaded with Masonic and Satanic symbology. Some of you have been called to live in neighborhoods that are really raucous and loud. Lots of people who really enjoy making a lot of noise and often do it because they're drunk or high. Some of you are called to live in places like that. So what's your lion's den? Maybe it's your unsaved extended family who turn holidays into nightmares. Or maybe you have some friends involved with a cult. We've had that in our lives. Whatever it is in your life that questions God's character and precepts and threatens to tear apart your belief and values, that's a lion's den, and that's Babylon. Daniel's lion encounter occurred in the real Babylon. So during this year of self-examination to see where we might be entangled or endangered by the world, let's take a look at this servant, a Bible hero who lived and served in one of history's most godless cultures, but never compromised with it. I long for the day when someone takes the time and invests the money to tell Daniel's life story in a movie. The drama, intrigue, and power struggles he lived through are epic. His time in the lion's den happened at age 70, but the other fascinating events of his life are well worth rereading in Daniel chapters 1 through 5. After that, he goes off into prophecy. But boy, the stories of his life. So I just reread those, and I had these questions that came to my mind. Why did God rescue him instead of letting him be killed as other martyrs were through the centuries? And how did he survive the lion's den without going insane or losing his faith? First, some thoughts about why God rescued Daniel, and these are just my opinions. It seems that as I read Daniel's story again, the greater theme God brings forth is the contrast between the darkness of the Babylonians and the light of Daniel and his friends. The way Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego behave as slaves in a foreign country is totally unique from the get-go. They risked their lives by refusing to do what they were told and eat the original food that was provided for them at the king's table. Then there's the fiery furnace episode, and then Daniel's ability to repeat and interpret dreams when no one else could. This further cemented their unique approach to life in exile. Even as teenagers, Daniel and his pals knew who they were and who they belonged to. They feared the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob more than King Nebuchadnezzar. They committed themselves to standing out, when apparently, now think about this, the rest of the Hebrew captives chose to fit in and behave like the Babylonians. How many were thrown in the furnace because they wouldn't bow? I don't know where Daniel was on that day. He got chucked in a lion's den later on, but what happened to all the rest of the Hebrew slaves? They adapted to Babylonian culture. I'm thinking that was hard and lonely to be in exile like that. So it's understandable that a lot of Hebrews chose to fit in and behave like Babylonians. But I wonder if that made God deeply sad that out of all those exiles, only 4 stood up for their faith in God. I believe God was telling a multi-level story to the people of that time, and a story that would last for millennia for Christians living in godless cultures. He wanted us to know some intimate details of what it looked like and the prices that were paid to stand out in a godless society. Those 3 boys did not know that Jesus would appear in the furnace. Daniel did not know that he would live through his night in the lion's den. These guys had a reckless faith, and I think that's what God wanted for all the Hebrew captives, the Babylonians, and the rest of us through the centuries to see. God created a dramatic story of rescues in the most impossible situations for those who remained faithful to him because that suited his purposes best at that time. I think he decided that everyone in Babylon needed some grand gestures of the one true God's power and authority more than they needed to see faithful Jews dying. Did God love all the other martyrs of our faith torn apart by lions in the Roman Colosseum centuries later any less than these 4 Hebrews, though? Of course not. I am starting to understand better how God deals with us is far more about his greater purposes than our comfort or safety. It's not that he doesn't care about our comfort and safety. He does, deeply and dearly, and he tells us that many times in his word. If you will look at Christ's torture and death, though, it becomes clear that the salvation of humans, for example, became more important than the safety of Jesus. So that's what I think God might have been doing in Babylon. Share what you think he might have been doing in the comments section. But what was Daniel's role in coming up safely out of the lion's den? We've already reasoned that it wasn't because God loved and valued him any more than any Christian martyr. God preserved Daniel and his friends to demonstrate his greatness. However, Daniel's faith played a role in his safe exodus from that terrible place. Remember, the people who framed him and their families certainly did not survive being tossed into the lions. Horrible. Let's try to imagine what it was like for Daniel from beginning to end. First, let's talk about that lion's den. The water table is very high where Babylon was, and there are no natural caves. So ancient scrolls and carvings show that places like the one where Daniel was imprisoned were created especially to house lions, probably out of bricks. So we can picture more of a large, inescapable room rather than a pit. Access in and out of the room would have been from two ways. One would have been a door at ground level used to allow the lions in and out so the kings could hunt them on occasion. The other entrance would have been an opening at the top, well out of the reach of any lion's ability to jump. It was from there that people would be tossed into the room so that no one else was put into danger. Daniel was tossed in from a height of probably at least 15 feet or so, which could have damaged his body immediately. But it didn't. Then Daniel 6 describes how the room was sealed off with a stone. So I'm guessing they slid some stone over the top of it. I presume to ensure that no one could rescue him. The king sealed that stone to the room with his signet ring and then spent a sleepless night. I hope so. My goodness. The next morning, the king eagerly opens that lion room, and there is Daniel, unharmed, explaining how God sent angels to shut the beasts' mouths. Again, Daniel did not know that God would rescue him or how he would do it. I'm sure he was pretty surprised that the lions remained docile around him. He obviously remained calm, and I think stayed in prayer. Daniel 6:24 says that he was then brought up out of the room, and no kind of harm was found on him because he had trusted in God. God's larger plan and Daniel's faith in God formed a partnership that created a miraculous outcome to Daniel's story. I don't know about you, but I think I'd be hysterical in those circumstances, making it difficult to access my faith. But Daniel didn't behave that way at all. I think there's several reasons, but I'm just going to ask you to think about two of them. I'm coming in for a landing here. First, Daniel set the pattern of faithfulness to and trust in God at a young age. The reason many of us struggle with either fearing or complying with Babylon is because we have not set our faces like flint, like Isaiah said in chapter 50, verse 7, as Daniel did. It's not too late. We can start today and restart tomorrow if we fail today's challenges. Secondly, Daniel did not mess around with prayer. He took it seriously. That's what landed him in the lion's den in the first place. I have to tell you, I am endlessly grieved at how poorly attended most prayer meetings are at the churches I've known and been a part of. Tell you what, you schedule an auction and a pig roast, and the pillars of the assembly will be there with bibs on. But prayer meetings? Folks, we need to spend less time reading books about it and talking about it and commit ourselves to the sacrifice of an effective, fervent prayer life. We may need to turn off our TVs and social media and put our phones down. Just saying, I'm preaching to myself here. Do not take offense. Daniel is a hero in living in the world, but not being of it. We can model our lives after him. There was a carelessness with his own life for the sake of God's kingdom. I think I've gone to caring more about my own life than the souls of others. and God's greater purposes. I confess, I'm too much of a fun and comfort seeker by nature. I'm always looking for the next good time. That's a part of how Babylon seeks to entwine me in its ways. Concern for my own entertainment and comfort has edged lost souls and the voice of the Holy Spirit out of the place they belong in my prayers and my heart. I think if I'm going to become disentangled from Babylon, I'm going to need Holy Spirit's help to recognize where I am wrapped up in some tentacles. I got to get free. It feels a little uncontrolled and scary, but I'm also asking God to grow more of a reckless faith in me, like Daniel and his crew. How about you?